Yep. Yeah. You do those two, you want to go to the top of this?
Roger, you're an opinionated prick.
I just need to do my window. How do I make my window? View. This is what I want. Gallery. There we go. Okay. So we're ready to roll
Nothing I say about
here.
you, Ant, could possibly be libelous.
Okay. So I guess the first question probably should be addressed to Roger is what's so special about these funny little Tumlaran boats? Why are they something that people have a passion for? Because you've owned 3 of them over your time. So presumably you've thought about why.
They are special, particularly in Port Phillip, because they are the first of the 1-class yachts that came to Port Phillip. And that's in 1937. They were designed in 1935 by Knut Reimers, and they became very popular in Europe and in North America quite quickly. And the what was the St Kilda Yacht Club at the time were looking for a 1-class yacht and had a few contenders before that. And the Tumlaran came in quite late in the assessment process in 1936. And it was decided that that was the boat it was going to be. So its importance in Port Phillip is because of that, and because they have been now 83 years later are still very active in the bay.
I'm going to interrupt there a minute. Rog, just hang on a sec, because I understand what you're saying, and there's no doubt that's true. But the sort of nub of my question is, what is it about this thing, this shape of this boat that people find attractive? Not why did it end up in Australia? I mean, it could be a dragon, it could be, a soling, it could be something else. So what is it about this particular design, shape, aesthetic, functionality that attracts you?
Yep. I'm just I can't see you. Oh shit, have I just lost that?
Can you turn it the right way?
We need to rotate.
Okay. Yep.
Can you turn your phone sideways so we can see you the right way?
Yeah, sideways.
No, other sideways.
The other sideways.
Degrees.
That's it.
That's better.
Okay. Now, don't fucking touch it.
This is being recorded.
Okay.
Put your hands in your pocket, Roger.
Okay, we're going to recap here. We're going to rewind a little bit. Okay, Roger, I heard your answer about how they ended up being the boat that they are. But is there something, and feel free to put in again what you said, Ant, but is there something about the actual boat, whether it's the functionality of it or the aesthetics of the boat, that has made you become a 3-time owner and has made you other guys put in so much of your spare time over the last few years?
I think the quickest answer to that is the aesthetic. It is just a beautiful boat, both in the water and out of the water. A lot of boats, particularly classic boats, look fantastic floating and look like someone's welded something horrible underneath them. These boats are just a stunning aesthetic design that is very functional, and particularly functional in Port Phillip.
So, Chris, what were you saying about that before? You were talking about that.
I just thought that their design suited the sea state that quite often is present in Port Phillip. The design of the boat suits that very well. It's able to sail through the chop and without having to depower. Almost the main depowers itself and allows it to sail in the choppy conditions that Port Phillip presents on a regular basis.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think it's probably more.
I was going to say,
the
other thing about them is if you look at lots of other boats at that time, they had, they were often a gaff rig and they're sort of squat sail planner, and they've just got this really elegant high aspect. They're quite an elegant, beautiful looking boat because of that mast configuration. It must have been really radical for its time, I think.
Yeah, it would have been the first sort of proper Marconi rigged one design class that they'd probably been, definitely on the bay, probably in Australia. Actually, I need to sort of have a think about that. So that sort of explains a little bit about why you guys have put in so much time and effort in what you've done so far. So Rog, just give us a short potted history of how she came into your life this time round, sort of how you came across her and what the process was to get her into the shed in Williamstown.
Well, as you said, I'd been involved with a couple before Yvonne, and one of which I'm still racing, YVONNE. And I got a call. I was the sort of go-to point for the Tumlaran people in Melbourne. And I got a call from James Jackson in Adelaide. And his father, John Jackson, had bought YVONNE from Kim Chipman in, I think, early 2000s, 2002, something there, and had taken it to South Australia, to Hindmarsh Island, with the intent of doing a complete restoration. He had become unwell during that period and was unable to complete, in fact, even to start the restoration. And so James, John's son, had contacted me wondering if there's anybody might be interested in it. And at the time, I didn't know anybody, but within about 3 days, I thought, perhaps I do know a few people, and rang around to and 8 different people who were both owners and of Tums, but people interested in classic yachts in particular, and this classic yacht in particular, were interested in putting some money in the tin, which allowed us to make a deal with James and to go and pick her up. We'd actually seen, James had sent over quite a series of photos of her, both internally and externally. And given that it had been in a shed in Hindmarsh Island, now pretty bloody hot there, for 12 years, it hadn't opened up. And I thought, he hasn't doctored these photos. This has got to be real. Given its birth date, its launch date of 1938, there was a very good chance it was going to be made of Huon, because YVONNE, built in the same year by a different boat builder, was also built of Huon. And given that it hadn't opened up, I suspected that it would be. So having convinced a number of people to put up a reasonably modest amount of money, Ferdy Darley and I jumped in a truck and drove to Hindmarsh Island fairly early one morning after Ferdy had had a pretty heavy night the night before. So he was asleep most of the way. So we got there, and here was this boat as advertised, quite literally. She was closed up totally. There was no seams open at all. All the spare parts that were required, the rigging, sails, the sails were obviously fairly old, but everything from a hardware point of view was there. So Freddie and I had a good look over her, and then propped her up. The trailer, this very substantial tandem trailer, came with her. And so we propped her up on the trailer and set out. Over what the actual road from Hindmarsh through to get onto the highways are pretty windy and pretty lumpy. And so she didn't try to hop off the trailer, but she was certainly moving around on the trailer quite a bit. So once we'd settled her in, she travelled actually very beautifully on the back. So the physical bringing her back meant we had to stop at Murray Bridge to have a few cold beers, and then set out the following morning to bring her into Williamstown, into Ferdy's shed in Williamstown, by sort of early afternoon. And we had a wonderful welcoming group of people there to see us coming. It was fabulous.
So one thing we haven't really covered, again, if we can keep it just sort of concise, why is Yvonne so important? I mean, she's just another Tom, isn't she? No, why is she important?
She's not. She has won. Well, she is YVONNE 2 effectively, and Commodore Joe White was very keen to get the Tums underway, and so Charlie Peel built the first one for him. He decided he wanted another one, but he wanted to keep the name. So there was YVONNE 94 and YVONNE 97. This is YVONNE 97. The reason she is so special is that a Norwegian sailor by the name of Selim Nurminen came to Australia on cargo boats and was unable to get the cargo boat that he had was unable to get a load to go back, and so he was hanging around a bit. Got a job with the St Kilda Yacht Club as the yard manager, but he was an outstanding sailor. So Joe White, the Commodore, got Selim to skipper the boat for him, and it won almost everything. And that's particularly the reason that if you look at the records that Bert Ferris has got all the detail of the races that happened through all those years. YVONNE has won more races than any other Tumlaran, and probably more races than any other boat on Port Phillip. That's what made her reasonably special.
Do you think it's too long a bow to draw to sort of to say that a Scandinavian sailor was good at sailing Scandinavian ships?
May have something to do with it.
Maybe.
He certainly clipped the ears of all the other sailors at the time.
I suppose he would have grown up. He would have grown up aboard those meter-style boats, the long overhang, narrow boats that are so famous. You know, the sort of scary cruiser-type boats in Scandinavia. So those it wouldn't have been a foreign-looking boat for him. You know, it wouldn't be.
No.
You know, it wouldn't be like climbing aboard a Cuda boat or something like that. He would know exactly how it was meant to work and how it would have been sailed, I think.
He also was an outstanding sailor.
Yeah.
He might have that might have given him a bit of a run-up start in the early stages, but he consistently beat all the other Australian sailors over many years, even into his early 80s. He was still winning those races. So I think the point you make is valid, but it doesn't hold over that extended period of time.
So, Ant, when you first saw the boat, did you have in your mind or on a bit of paper or the back of an envelope or whatever, what you thought the sort of outline of the list of work required would be?
Well, Roger called me and asked, would you be interested in helping fix up this boat? And he suggested there were half a dozen ribs might need replacing. Looked good. And then in that drive back, I think they broke nearly every rib because the ribs were, turned out they're all blackwood ribs, and over time that timber goes really brittle. So, they'd had their day. So I didn't know probably what we were getting into. We knew there was some ribs. We knew it needed a tidy up, and the deck looked pretty sound and all the rest. So it didn't seem like it was too huge a project until the first day Roger and I got it in the shed and we started going through it. We started marking cracks in ribs, and then we realised that every rib was pretty much needed replacing. I think we did, Roger. There's not many we didn't.
So how many ribs did you end up doing?
108.
There's 108 ribs in the whole boat, and we replaced 104. And the other 4 had been fixed up as a result of a fairly serious prang in the stern. So we replaced 104 of the 108.
And I know, I've sort of watched you do a bit of that, and how much of Roger, you've done a boat before, you've done a Tumlaran before, and Ant, this is part of what you do. But Chris, massive learning curve for you.
Yeah, I had no idea about how, putting ribs in boats. Like, I'm a part owner in a Cuda boat and had some exposure to it, but had never witnessed it all coming together. So it was a great of great interest to me to be involved in it and participate in the restoration.
So do you think part of the, I mean, obviously, you know, there's this desire to save this craft and to make it good again, but to use a cliche, I mean, the journey is almost as important. I mean, the actual, the doing it, I mean, is a very important part of the whole process, not just the outcome. Is that, do you agree with that? Or?
Definitely. And it especially is now because we haven't got to the end of the journey.
Well, absolutely, because we can all go sailing. It's not as though we're doing it just to go sailing. We're doing it as a project, and to get to the end of it, whether it's sailed extensively or not, probably doesn't really worry any of us greatly. It'll just the satisfaction of having started and completed it to our satisfaction.
And in regards to that, when you say to our satisfaction, I mean, there's sort of varying degrees of what that might mean. I mean, you know, it's not going to be a Steinway grand piano, is it? It's, you know, it's not going to be varnished within an inch of its life. And yet it's not a fishing boat. It's something in between. Have you sort of thought of, you know, about how you might explain what that philosophy of the restoration is?
I've thought a fair bit about that one. It's very much to use as much of what was original as possible. And, you know, the keel, all the planks, we've replaced probably 2 sections of plank, 1.5 meters, 2 meters each is all we've done on the planks. We've had to do all the ribs. So it's about keeping all of that together. But also you look inside the boat, and they were built, when it was built as a racing boat. It wasn't built to be varnished and shiny inside. You know, it was
built to go fast.
It was built to go fast. It was built
Absolutely.
not too heavy. There's no extra stuff in there. You know, there's rough edges on the inside. It's not like you see a lot of restoration work happens, and people make them nicer than they were because it was built as a racing boat. And
if we could go back in time, it'd be an interesting exercise to ask Joe White. Is it Joe White? Is that right?
Yeah, he's the Commodore.
Yeah, to ask Joe White when he got the boat built by Charlie Peel, say, how long do you think this is going to last, this boat? And he'd probably said 20 or 30 years, maybe.
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah, I agree.
He probably wouldn't say 90 or 100 years, would he?
No.
And there was
so in a sense, the restoration is something that was probably never planned. I mean, you'd say different things about some other classic boats, but as you say, these are lightweight, fast racing boats that were designed to win the one design competition at the Royal Melbourne Yacht Squadron or the Royal St Kilda Yacht Club, as it was then.
And the fact that they built, you know, the keel is as solid as anything, the planks being hewn, it'll last a long time. You know, that stuff's all right. It's just the ribs. We ended up taking the deck off because there's no way you could get access to all the ribs and do that work with the deck on it. And that, you know, but that's a plywood deck. It was originally a plywood deck. That's not a big deal in replacing it that way. I don't think there's, you know, I think we've pretty much kept the integrity of the boat. We've done things like not, like all the combing and that, we've kept the original combing, but it was, you know, it needed some work and had splits and that. And we've actually laminated an extra layer on the inside. So we've kept sort of the integrity of the original, but just added a bit to strengthen it up. Lots of things like that.
Okay, let's, when I've done these interviews before in the past with people who've spent way too much money on great big boats or restoring things that, you know, have pretty much drained their finances.
I'm just grabbing another beer.
Well, don't touch your phone, Rog. Hold on. I'm going to wait for Rog to come back. He's creating extra work for me. It's unbelievable. Now I'm going to have to edit this bit out. Seriously.
Oh, has he got to go inside to get a beer?
How far away is his beer?
No, I'm in the shed.
Okay. So I'm going to recap that bit. So when I've done these interviews in the past with people who've spent way too much money on big yachts or restoring fishing boats or whatever it is, I'm always a bit loath to talk about numbers because it's probably embarrassing for them and all that sort of thing. But the nice thing about this boat is the numbers we're talking about aren't very big. So I think it's okay to talk about them. And the reason I want to talk about the numbers is because I like people to know that if you have time on your hands and a certain degree of skill and some input from people who do have the skill, then it's possible to do this stuff. So Rog, just give us a back of an envelope calculation of what it's costing. We're not holding you
so far. We spent $8,000 on the boat, of which we got $2,000 for the trailer. Since then, I still haven't spent the $2,000 of the trailer money, but Ant and Chris and I put a little bit of money in, but nothing of substance, less, I would think, than $1,000 each.
Yeah, much.
Excuse me, I think a fair bit less than $1,000 each. So really, at the moment, it owes us. I would think at the most $9,000. The hull is complete, except for the fairing and painting, and we've got a bit of work to do on the rig, and then some sails. So the actual outlay in dollar terms has been pretty minimal. The outlay in time terms has been substantial. So each of those rigs.
I'm going to pull you up there because we've already had this conversation in a sense earlier on down the track, is that we're really looking at the time put in, as not as a cost, but as a benefit, because it's not, none of you are doing it because you need to earn a living. You're doing it because this is part of what you want to do. And it's a fulfilling thing in itself rather than being an obligation or a, so
we've had, there's been a few,
go ahead, Ant.
So I was just going to say, there's been a few things on that. Like, we've given quite a few bits and pieces. Like there was a guy who sailed, Roger will remember, he sailed on YVONNE as a kid, and he owned another tub that he was going to fix up. He actually bought all the copper nails, and we're probably talking a couple $1,000.
$2,500.
Yeah, and so he had the copper nails and in the shed, and he gave them to us. So. Because he wanted to see the boat fixed, So we've had a couple of things like that.
But that's also part of the. Go, Chris.
So you also mentioned in that the spotted gum was all we didn't have, which we used for the ribs, all came from Pollywood side or the Alma-Dopel.
Alma-Dopel,
and they were just offcuts. And it can't be not said that we've been extremely fortunate that we've been in the Ferdy Darley's shed and we've had that's at no cost. Plus we've had access to his expertise and tools and machinery, etc., which have been obviously saved us a huge amount of money.
Yeah. No, I think that's really, so let's say, by the time we've got sales and maybe a bit of hardware for the mast and obviously running rigging and things like that, you'd hope to be in there for an outlay of 15 grand. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cash outlay, not time.
Yep.
And I should know this, but how many syndicate members are there? 5?
6.
6. So there's 6 people who've put in $1,000. So, and I know you guys have put in all the time. So, I mean, we're not looking, apart from the time, as a big commitment to anybody, are we? And at the end of the day, we've got this boat that is probably one of the more important boats in Victoria, in Australia, let alone Victoria, which it certainly is going to get a new lease of life. So what point I'm making here is, if anybody's watching this, is with some careful thought and with the right circumstances, these things are possible. I think people tend to look at yacht restorations as this sort of absolute drain of money that will, cause your divorce and ruin your life and make you sell your house and all that sort of thing, which sometimes they are. I've seen a few like that and may have got close to that myself occasionally, but let's not talk about that. but I think it doesn't have to be like that. And I think what I love about this project is that the process and the way that it's happened is just as important as the outcome.
That's very much the case. And in fact, the group that are an important part of this are the Fair Winds group. The people that you have gathered around Fair Winds, and they're the logical people, as I saw it, to put the hard word on, if you like, at that early stage of getting $1,000 each to put it together to purchase the boat. But that camaraderie that has continued over a much more extended period than we'd planned has just strengthened. It's been absolutely fabulous. And Chris drives 2.5 hours up and back each day, so 2.5 each way, just to come and fiddle on this boat. His dedication to it has been just wonderful. And Ants has some terrific skills that have meant that we've been able to do some things, bits and pieces that he's had in his shed, meant that we haven't had outlays. And he's a very skilled craftsman, and so that's made the whole thing easier. And given Ant's daytime job as a project manager in massive scale projects, a little project like this is both, I think, for him been fun, but also he's got the right ideas and can see the direction we're heading in. So both Chris and Ant, hands-on, have been just fabulous.
Okay. Yeah, go Ant. Sorry.
Community thing. There were, we were all friends and knew each other and sailed with each other a lot. But there's a whole world of Williamstown boat shed that all of these people that come past all the time, and from people like Dave Allen, brilliant sailor and knows Tums from when he was very young, and he's just ideas and that to bounce things off is fantastic. And then there's all of the boat builders in that, that are working in there that are just really helpful. And I've learned so much doing it, but they're just having, I think if we had been doing this in a shed somewhere else, it would have been a lot harder, so much harder. And I don't think the tools and the gear is it. It's actually the people around you and the advice, and then being able to see what they do elsewhere, and it just makes it possible,
Okay.
Well, it's only that it's being in the shed, and it mightn't be a lot of advice, but it's that 15 or 20 minutes that somebody's able to give you that allows you to progress and do it in a shipwright-like manner, rather than having an uneducated guess at proceeding. So I think that as Ant said, the surroundings amongst shipwrights and other people that call in on a regular basis and are interested in the project has been invaluable to it progressing and to the quality of the restoration that we're going to end up with.
Fantastic. Okay, well, that leads on really well to, we're getting close to, I think, sort of summing this up, but let's just take it in turn and say, okay, so somebody's found a boat and they want a, similar size. It's not a massive, great 50-foot, 100-year-old boat. It's just a boat. So a piece of advice, something that's sort of something that you say, get this bit right. What would it be, Rog? Something that you said to you, some advice you'd give to somebody thinking about doing this?
I think you need to be realistic that it's going to potentially cost you more in time and dollars. And if you're doing it because you want to make a quid, then forget it. If you're doing it because you want a project that you feel comfortable of being able to complete, then certainly go ahead. The big thing that has worked for me is having the other syndicate members around it. Just the stimulation that creates, there are times you're going, bloody hell, but it never ever got to a serious bloody hell. But if I think I was doing it by myself, I would have struggled. So, to answer that fairly simply, is be realistic about what the project you're taking on, and be ready to take it all the way.
And
I reckon if really think about the boat it is that you're restoring or doing the work on, because we've been going at this, I know it's COVID, but effectively over 4 years we're spending, a day a week, not every week, but most. And if you're going to do it, make sure the boat's really working, because, there are plenty of old boats out there that need fixing. So pick a really good one. They're not there's plenty of people giving away beautiful old boats. It's not hard to find a boat to restore, but make sure it is worthwhile. And if it's something you wanted to use for yourself, make sure it's suited to your use. We don't have any great ambitions to be sailing this boat. I'm not sure what's going to happen to it, but it's definitely worthwhile doing. You just know that, and you see it from the people visit. The number of people who come and check it out because they know the boat and its history, you realise that you're doing the right thing, fixing it up.
Chris?
I'd agree. I'd say the important thing, the two things I'd take out of it is don't do it. The last thing you do is try and do it by yourself. And the other thing is probably your estimate of time, double it.
Yeah. No, I think
absolutely.
That's
absolutely
right.
And don't ever think you're going to sell it for a profit.
Definitely not.
Okay, so that's fantastic, guys. One last question, because we're going really well with time here. This is fantastic. One last question, and you've been skirting around it a bit, but you're going to have to address it. What are you going to do when you're finished? And not with yourselves, but with the boat.
Yeah.
So what would be a vision of what could happen to this very, very important boat, which would now, without a whole lot of work, now has got another 50 years of life in her, as long as she's looked after year by year, she's got another 50 years in her at least. So what's the vision for this important piece of sort of very functional history?
I would like to see young sailors take her on. I don't think they would need necessarily to make any financial contribution to it, but I would like to see younger people in the classic yacht fraternity. And if we could find a younger regular crew to take it out and compete with us, that I would see as being a very positive end result.
You guys, any other comment there, Aaron? What would you like to see?
Yeah, I'm sort of not fussed, and I don't really know. It's strange in that we've all got boats to sail on, and it seems like a bit excessive to have this. But I think, to me, it'd be really good if it went to St Kilda, Royal Melbourne Yacht Squadron, where, it was the champion boat there for so long. So if there's a way of working with the club there and finding a way for people to use, it's a boat, it should be used, and I don't know that we will have the time to sail it as much, but you never know, we might end up sailing it, but I think it'd be just great if it, a boat that people could take out and race. So we've got to find a way around it, and have it anchored near the jetty where everyone goes past, and you see the old Cuda boats, because they're beautiful to look at, and a lot of people come out on that jetty, so I think it'd be good to see.
Does that marry with your expectations, Chris?
Yeah, I've got to be the same. As everybody else has said, we've got boats to sail.
In fact, all three of you all own your own wooden boat. So for all of you, this is the second wooden boat.
Yeah.
And don't forget, Mark, you're one of the partners and you own a wooden boat.
Yeah.
I probably should have made that as what's it called, as a confession at the start. but I'm certainly not one of the partners in terms of contribution, but sort of time contribution. Yeah. So yeah, sorry, Chris. So,
yeah, but look, so yeah, the time issue. I'd certainly like to say. I think I've only sailed on a Tumlaran once or twice in my so far. So I'd probably enjoy a season of sailing it once it's in the water. But and floating the idea of some kind of and Rod of contributing to the maintenance of it, and not really sailing it all that much. Sounds and belonging to Royal Melbourne Yacht Squadron would be something that'd be certainly worth pursuing, and I'd be quite interested in.
Fantastic.
I would like to sail in the next state championships and win them.
Yes.
Cool. We'll have to channel Surin Nuriman's vibe. And find some little waft of his talent in the bilges.
Yeah.
Is that 2022 or 2023?
I don't know when it is.
Yeah. Right.
Well, guys, when we started this website, one of the things that I really, really wanted to avoid was to have a bunch of old blokes standing around talking about old boats. We've obviously failed terribly tonight because that's what we've got. But it's a great conversation, and I think the work that you're putting in is as important for the actual journey and the philosophy of what you're doing as much as it is for the boat. And if a few people can watch this and think and be inspired by how they might, sort of change their lives a little bit, as well as sort of keeping some yachting history alive, then that's a bloody good thing. So thank you all.
Yep. Yeah.
And they probably put them in afterwards.
They definitely put them in afterwards.